Okay. Here we go. So let's think by now I'd actually have a routine and way to do some of this stuff automatically, but I fail to do it every day. Oh, forgive me while I yeah, like the bot and stuff. I really should look at YouTube stuff. Hey, Connie, how's it going? Welcome in. We really should. Should automate some things. Crashing my work PC with high speed against the wall. Going that well, huh? Those days, I understand. Fine. ESSA, dropping really useful stuff again. Uninstalling wild, the boot was full. Uninstalling wild kernels and hope for the best. Ooh. I can't imagine working on a Linux-based system. Unless you are working on a Windows-based system and I don't understand how to use Windows. Okay. Game Trove. Quiz guy. Services. Oh. If this all works. Oh, there's telemetry in there. Oh well. Oh well. I'm not gonna do anything. So I've been playing with telemetry. That was quite the challenge. RabbitMQ, Couchbase, server start, yep, because the guy started. TP only one, of course this didn't start. Why would it start? If I ever get to the point where this actually runs in a production system, the Kafka thing, I am definitely using Kafka Cloud. Or Confluent Cloud as it is. There's no way I'm dealing with hosting my own Kafka. Just too much of a nightmare. Again. So, today, what am I going to be doing? Today I am going to be creating that internal API for best doing if I'm right. I often see my desktop much. Really, what I should do at this point is have a VM to dev off of. Okay. I think that's readable. So, the plan for today is to work on this internal API here and kind of figure out some of those workflows. So, an internal API is going to be the quickest thing to implement that will highlight the challenges and the pieces I need to understand the soonest. I don't think it's the even near-term solution. I think that I'm going to end up on some form of message bus. If I want the reliability there, right? But this allows me to build out the pieces, figure out if there is a valid workflow from tickets to planning items, right? And I think as much as I don't want to do it, I really have to start thinking about what this looks like to try and figure out what my use cases are. So I was going through this last night and this morning a little bit, thinking through, how am I going to progress this project if I just keep doing things piecemeal, and kind of making it up as I go along, which, if we're being honest, there's a lot of actual companies do this. Right? And that's not agile. That's just craziness. But this will allow me to turn around quickly, understand the difficulties, figure out some of the data items that I need. Because I don't know what I don't know at this point. That's the biggest challenge. So if I try and run ahead, I'm going to plan out a system. I'm going to think through all these problems that may or may not be. And then I'm going to hit a wall of, I don't know how to implement that, or that's too complicated, or really that doesn't do what I want it to do, right? So I want to make sure that I'm validating as I go. I did a lot of prototyping up front so that some of the technologies were understood, but now I need the processes. And the only way I'm going to do that is if I start implementing something. So, that being said, space is open. Blue sky. I'm trying to accommodate more dark mode stuff. I like having DuckDuckGo, but it doesn't support plugins. Kind of its nature. I can just hit a button and clear everything out. It also stops a lot of tracking. But I can't find any plugins for it to give me dark mode by default on websites. Right? It supports the dark mode, but it doesn't automatically make sites dark mode. Yes. Pretty much. It's I get it. I've been streaming for long enough to know that, dark mode is a preferred way for people to watch streams because they might not actually be in a well-lit room. So you can't always just have the things the way you want if you want people to watch the stream. But kind of like the security of DuckDuckGo, but I'm going to have to install Chrome and put the plugins in for dark mode, I think. Yes, there's a payoff. So my biggest challenge is I alt tab quickly, and I can't get out of that habit. And that's where my problem comes, because if I'm flicking back and forth reading something, I should just move it off the page, off the screen, and put the link in the chat. That would be a safer way of doing it, because then if anyone wants to read it, they can do, but they don't have to constantly deal with me going flip. That's where it gets damaging for me. And I'd like to what about shader that inverts the colors? The dark mode shader. What, at the OBS level? Why are pre-rolls not showing? Why are pre-rolls on? Forgive me, the pre-roll time is not on. I thought it would run ads at the beginning. Never mind. Don't know what is that for. Okay. So, general work. This is done, right? this is actually done. And that is merged. I did start playing around with OpenTelemetry over the weekend. That was quite the challenge. OpenTelemetry was not something that I was having fun using, mainly because there's so many different tools, so many different processes. There's so many different components to move. And in the end, when I realized I wanted logging around my logging to know where my logging was going, I stopped and thought, I'm doing this wrong. Right? Because I didn't understand the components. So I think I've got to bring that back to, hey, I want logging. What does the logging story look like? Because that's tracing is pretty much the first one I should probably start with, right? Tracing from application perspective, tracing the request through the system. That's probably what I want to be focused on. So what does tracing look like, right? Which tools do I need to use? Because obviously there's Prometheus, which is metrics. Grafana, which is kind of an aggregation tool, which can pull all the different things together. Then I know Seek for logging, but I don't see Seek in the OpenTelemetry pipeline so far. So I've got to figure out what that means. There's also Jaeger. That's a logging thing, I think. There's all these different tools, and I got to kind of figure out which ones I want to use and how I want to use them, and how to plug them in and make them useful. And I want to kind of do that off stream so that I'm not struggling too much on stream. That way I can at least talk about things, or if someone has something to show me, I know what I'm looking for, and I'm not like, oh, what? I don't know what that is. So today I'm going to focus very much on this component, this internal API. What does it mean? So from a software perspective, the goal is, the use case here is, I am a product manager. A support ticket has been added into the system that has warranted further investigation, but in the end deemed it isn't actually a problem with the system, or it isn't an actual bug that can be fixed. It is something that needs to be addressed in the future software. So, but there's more requirement gathering to go into it. It's not just a case of, yep, this goes to developers. So that's why I want to introduce this concept of an interim planning item. And what happens is the ticket remains as a ticket, because the ticket still tracks a lot of the information that came in initially. We don't want to create another system that has that information necessarily. So, we might have I gotta get my names on these products right. We might have a ticketing system that then links to Jira. Then that link is a soft link and none of the information carries across. So you have to click on the link and go look at the ticket. If there's permissions, etc., no one gets to see it. It's not all in one place. You've got to navigate around. It gets messy. So what I want to do is say, okay, well, when it becomes a planning concern, that ticket can be promoted to become a planning item. A planning item is its own thing. It's its own set of data, its own notes, etc. However, when you go into the planning item, you'll see all the ticket information. You'll see that it is inherited from a ticket and that it contains all that information. If a note is added to the ticket in the ticketing system after the fact, it still appears in this view. That's the goal. Or continuous information, right? So when I'm going through this, I've actually been considering what it means to do some of these pieces, the value in doing them. Why am I trying to do it this way? And I think it's definitely to increase visibility, but actually lessen process, right? this is something that happens, something we need to do. So what I want to do is make sure, okay, well, the software is continuous, but the process is still a human process. There's still a communication thing. There's still the ability to see these things. So from the support person's perspective, they're still able to see updates on this even when it becomes a planning item, right? Because they can still see, oh, that's actually still in planning, or it's been rejected and shut down. That is notified to the people. So this is kind of why I'm doing this. And what I'm trying to figure out is, how do I get all these ideas down in a logical manner as I'm flowing through? So the only way I'm going to know that is if I actually put some of these pieces in place to validate some of that data. So let's go. So I have, as a product manager, I should be able to invoke an API that triggers a promotion for a ticket. I don't need to do that here. I don't need to explain that at this point, because this is beyond usable at this point. So let's create new branch. This feature E29. Remote ticket to planning out. So this branch might get scrapped, right? This branch may be just a branch that is useless in the end. But I'll only know that if I actually do some of this coding. So what does this process look like? What does a promotion of a thing look like, right? It's kind of an action. So if we have something that is like promote, or we post promotions, a ticket can later on become a story directly, right? If it's actually deemed development worthy immediately, you can still promote it to a story. That's not for the purpose of what we're working on right now. What I'm working on right now is kind of figuring out that first level of promotion, is ticket to planning it. So how do I want this to work? What do I want to see from the API perspective? Yeah. So my domain. I think is a domain though, not a application. The application is an orchestrator. I've recently heard that phrase. Application is to orchestrate the domain. So I've got to figure out where the parts are that I need here. So if it's a domain service to promote, right? The application service to pull the information together to do the promotion, and then coordinate updating the ticket to show that it is now promoted via planning item. Like, what does it mean for this side to be promoted? Right? What does it mean for the ticket? The ticket doesn't change. The ticket essentially just has some sort of indicator to say it is actually a planning item as well. The ticket doesn't stop being a ticket. Now, the moment you make something a planning item, does it have a different status? That's the question. What does it do visibly? This is why I think I'm going to have to hit UI sooner rather than later, because it is going to be challenging. Tick, welcome. Good day, how are you doing? I'm resisting the urge to throw code in. So, I do apologize if today's stream is going to be a little more on the boring side. But I wanted to kind of go through this process, and talking it out is necessary. So, I don't want to just jump in and write some code that is going to be messy. Not at this phase, anyway. So let's try something new. Let me see if I can do it. It's a big damn board. Don't want a big damn board. I'm very bad at modeling. That's the problem. I'm not a great visual designer. Design file. Oh, don't want a design file either. It's just certain. Let's do this. Exam board. And on board for promoting a ticket to a client. That won't make any sense, but let's see if it puts the pieces in. Let's see if it helps me anyway. Ads are incoming. Messages. Ads. So apologies if you are going to be an ad. Okay, so have a look. Let's see if this helps me in any single way, shape, or form. So I just typed into the AI tool inside of Figma, event storming board for promoting a ticket to a planning item. Problem identification. Take a close look at the ticket and gather all the relevant information. Identify the key details. Any blockers are challenging. Root cause analysis. Perform a root cause analysis to identify the underlying problem that needs to be addressed. Use techniques such as five whys. Fishbone diagram. Pareto analysis. Prioritize potential causes based on their impact. Collect feedback from users. Well, that's the difficult part. I'm the user. Right? Brainstorming session, vote for the best ideas. Well, the voting is going to be tough. I'm either going to outnumber myself all the time or, But this is useful guidance, right? I just don't know how to do this part, right? So let me see if I can do some of this, right? Because I have never done this sort of planning. Well, I've done this sort of planning once in a large group that was directed, right? When someone else is leading something that they're confident in doing, that's a little easier. When you're doing it yourself, a little bit more challenging. So let's see if I can free flow some of this information, right? What do I want to write? How do I want to do this? So when the user goes to promote a ticket, right? That ticket is in progress. Ticket is in progress. User goes promote. Who is the user? Right? That's one thing I've got to identify. Who is the user? Can a support user promote a ticket? I don't think so. Product owner? More than likely, right? Support manager? No, right? What happens to the ticket? Well, the ticket has to be closed, essentially, or marked as a different status, right? So this is again why having these systems as separate components does help me, because I don't have to represent, although I can represent this as a Kanban board in terms of its workflow, the statuses I apply to tickets don't have to be the same statuses I apply to planning items and stories, right? So I could have the general concept of pending, in progress, completed, archived, etc., or whatever. I can show them on a board, but I can have other statuses in there that provide visibility, etc. If I merged all these concepts into one system, then that system is going to kind of get confusing from a from the perspective of, what does status mean? If I can have tickets, planning items, and stories all in one system, what is status, right? Or do I have to kind of shoehorn them into individual statuses, right? So there is one status, but everything has to fit into all these groups, right? So there is a great benefit in having these systems broken up in this way. There's some downsides, right? That I have to coordinate all these things, right? So what status does a ticket move to? Because it has to move to something, right? So it has to shift to a status of something, right? What else do I need to know? Where does information go, right? So I say promote. What does promote mean? Promoting the ticket is an action that will register that ticket as a planning item in the planning system. What all the notes and things that can be with the ticket, where do they live, right? Does the planning item need that information? Because it certainly isn't getting a connection back to that database, right? That is not happening, right? Again, isolation of these systems means that this has its own data store, this has its own data store, right? So when I promote, right, it goes into this system and says, hey, create a planning item. You have a source ticket identifier. But what do I do with that information now, right? How do I gather that information? Does it mean anything to this system? I don't think it does right now. I think for right this second, that is literally a planning item with a ticket identifier attached to it. And it's okay for that to have a ticket identifier. It's okay for it to know that tickets exist. That's not a problem. But in the same, I don't want to clone that information. So in my initial designs, right, are thoughts on this, not even designs, right? So this is the piece I'm going to work on, right? I'm going to promote a ticket to a planning item. I'm going to make an API to begin with. That comes with some inherent problems, absolutely. And I've just gone on about light mode, dark mode stuff. Does this have a dark mode? screen readers. Preferences. Yeah. Does not have a download. Okay. Hey. Oh, have you tried event storming this? I don't know how to event storm effectively, and I am one person, right? So good morning. I was looking at event storming earlier, and that's what I just typed into this AI to try and generate. But it did give me some stuff to think about. So I probably will try and learn a little bit more about event storming, because I do want to go ahead and start planning out some of the future items here. Yeah. So I will do some learning off stream. Amal, good morning. Hope you're well. Bit of a fan. Ted's example of event storming. Well, going through it on stream will be a little bit difficult. Unless people are really into watching me try and figure out how to plan and learn how to plan. I'm trying to do the bare minimum here to get some questions answered as to what I'm actually going to write. What do I need to write? So, what status does a ticket move to in planning? I think states the product owner / PM is going to do this sort of stuff. So the role that's going to be available. I think it'd be more interactive than coding, actually. Well, the problem is context, right? I have a lot more context about what I'm doing, and even I'm kind of making it up as I go along. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing this enough to understand what I'm about to try and write. I do need to go through the exercise, though, of doing a larger scale planning. Realize coding sets a low bar for interactivity. Unless you want to try and tell me what to do. Some people treat streams as interactive, right? Like, pair programming. I really try hard not to do that sometimes. So where does information go? Information does not go very far right this second, right? So let's just discuss that. So I don't have to answer the question right now. To get this piece working, I don't have to answer the question as to how do I display a planning item that has a ticket. Nice. Good. Well, praised for how good your Agile is. By who? H, welcome. Hope you're well. Not sure what true was. Unless you were talking about the low bar for interactivity. Team leads, yeah. Because praise for agility when you are delivering product. If it's the same group that also likes to go waterfall quickly, then that just means you're quick at changing. Repairing, fast tickets, TDDs, lots of testing, these are all agile processes. That's why they're nice. Huh? How are you running Kafka? Right now, Kafka's running in my Docker container. Yeah. So, right now, I'm running all the pieces I need in Docker. I have a script that I have developed that allows me to start up all the pieces I need or shut them down, right? So I can turn them on or off. I have all my compose files in here. I know that there are tools for this. I know that I could be using Kubernetes as well to coordinate some of this stuff. It made me realize half the battle is knowing how to Agile, the other half is taking care of this function when it inevitably rears its head. I'm going to come back around on that point in a second. I tried to use Strimzy over Kubernetes using TLS auth. Yeah, I haven't dug deep enough into the deployment aspect. It's something I need to look deeper into, though. knowing how to Agile. So one of the things, I don't know if you saw it yesterday, so Apex was kind of asking me to document out a little bit, why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? What am I trying to achieve with this, right? And I'm noting down some thoughts. Nothing here is firm, right? What am I trying to solve, right? And one of the key tenets of the Agile Manifesto is individuals and interactions over processes and tools, right? So I keep asking myself, right, as I'm going through this, what am I actually trying to solve here? Why am I trying to solve it? And what I started to think of is, I'm not trying to say that I can develop software that is going to be bigger or better than something like Jira. Because all I'm focused on primarily is the visibility, right? These are tools we use today, right, to do our job. And what ends up happening is we feel that there is a need to put extra pieces on board to integrate more things and lose some of that agility because we need to visualize, we need to track, people need to see, people need to know, right? And what I'm trying to do here is write something that gets to the information quicker, right? Individuals and interactions. I'm trying to help with notification and visibility, right? This ticket, in today's system, in a lot of systems, this ticket is its own system, right? Yeah, I know. But my point is, right now, this would be a system. We'll have an integration with another system. When a ticket is created, we'll have a link to the thing that we create in the other system, which links back to this. There's a block there. There's a mental block. There's all sorts of blocks. There's processes. Where does this live? What status is it in? All these things, right? They get in the way, and we end up spending too much time trying to manage those processes, right? So what I want to do is introduce a level of visibility and transparency that means that no one has to ask someone else where is something. They can see it. If they should be seeing it, they can see it. They know where it is. They can look at it from a system perspective and see, oh, that actually became a planning item. It is now in review planning, and it will get promoted to a story, and we expect it to go into next quarter. They don't need to ask anybody for that, right? What that means is you can focus on being more agile. You can focus on the TDD. You can focus on the practices that really matter and get out of the way of there's no process in your way. So the difference is a ticket is a piece of work that comes in on demand from a customer, right? A ticket is a driven piece of information with a specific need. If that need is solvable by a quick bug fix, etc., it can be done within the ticketing. If it's a more involved piece that we don't understand, it becomes a planning item. And a planning item versus a story. So I'm adding that extra piece in the between. Not to add process, but to add transparency. Right? So oftentimes we build up these big backlogs of work, right? And they're not actually backlogs of work, they're backlogs of ideas and thoughts. They're things that are in progress. So I kind of want to break those out as planning items and say, hey, well, a planning item is something that is being planned. It is not an actual story. It might be many stories in the end, but the developers don't need to see it. They don't need the clutter of their backlog with work that they can't focus on, right? So a planning item is that interim step, and I'm just representing it as that. So a ticket can be promoted to a planning item, and that's the piece I'm working on right now. Because if a ticket is deemed it needs more, but it isn't well understood, then it can be promoted to a planning item, planned, and when that planning item is ready, it can be promoted to a story, right? But the lineage, the history continues on. And again, it's about making sure that the stories that are there are well thought out, well planned and prepared, And a developer can do what we actually are told we should be able to do and say, oh, I don't have any work to do, pluck the next one off the line. Yeah. So from the developer's perspective, actually, I've been thinking about this. This view, and I think I've said it before, right? This view is not for developers, right? As a developer, you care about what am I working on now? What are my priorities? What is actually in my view and realm? So I'm actually thinking of a completely different view for a developer coming into this, right? Where is your work right now? What status is it in? So that's kind of what I'm considering there. And that's why I'm trying to look to some of the planning, because I think I need to go through some of these things and formalize and firm up some of these ideas so I can actually make a plan as to how I'm going to tackle them. Yeah, my goal is not one of adding more complexity. My goal is one of getting out of the way quicker so that those agile practices that you mentioned are reinforced. So I've really been putting some thought into why I'm doing this, right? I'm trying to come up with some scenarios that make sense and that I've experienced, right? I'm trying to come up with different types of communication that we go through, random thoughts, right? Why I'm doing this. I'm not reinventing the wheel here, right? I am trying to solve a problem that I see and have experienced. Unicus, good morning. How are you doing? Apex, good morning. Use AI, checks the ticket for AI and warns the user if the ticket is too technical. Huh. Yeah, there's definitely some uses of AI in this process as well. They are for down the line. Peace. Good morning. How are you doing? Welcome on YouTube. So for anyone new joining the stream, this is one of the projects I work on stream. This is my bigger project. It's a personal thing. I'm going through right now, kind of piecing things together. There is software to back what this conversation is about, right? I am right now trying to figure out a particular challenge that will help me understand how I progress with the overall system. So hence a little bit more conversation and less coding. But if you're interested, if you want to ask any questions, feel free. There is no worries. The code for this is not available, just to be clear. This is a personal project that I am working on. I do work on other projects on stream, and they are linked in the panels below on my GitHub accounts. You could just scan the ticket for technical words. That's a quick stupid. Yeah, you could kind of come up with a score of technicality. If you could get the AI to look for certain technical terms or technical terms as it understands them and give you a score back, you could actually, there you go. For anyone who needs a challenge, is that possible? Oh, crap. Breathing. Good. Realize it's a major shortcut, but it's implementable in a very short period of time too. Yeah, it's not that's not too difficult. So yeah, I have been putting a lot of thought into why I'm doing this thing, what I'm doing, what my goals are, and I think I'm doing something that I don't see. I think I'm doing something that would help if I get to, when I get to realize the vision. I think this does definitely help. So I'm going to commit to doing this. What I like about this is the solution is very neat from Jira's, etc. Well, it's and because their software is already made, it's not like they can quickly copy it. And honestly, I don't care if they did. Right? If they came out with a feature tomorrow that looked like this, but it helped and got out of the way, does anyone really get hurt? I mean, I could be like, well, that was my idea first. But if the software's done and the software's built and the people are getting better quality of work life from it, I really don't mind. Not that I'm saying, hey, go out and copy what I'm doing. There's a lot of stuff in here that, I know I'm risking, considering I do want to make this a thing, I know that I'm risking a lot by streaming it. But I want to do this because it benefits us as developers, not necessarily because I want to get rich, right? Being able to work on my own stuff full time, that would be fun. I would love to do this full time. But right now, my goal is develop software and enjoy doing it. So, where were we? Oh, yeah, okay. This. So my apologies for the jump to the white screen. This does not have a dark mode. I do not have any plugins for dark mode. I'll try and minimize the impact there. So where does the information go? So right now it doesn't go anywhere, right? All that I need to do is add in an API for this, track that a planning item exists that has a ticket associated with it, and that's my piece. Kanye's joke there is because Kanye tried to blind us all yesterday with doing something similar on his stream, which, by the way, I do owe some shout outs. Kanye's doing some very awesome stuff with Godot. Bot dev, so building a Twitch lib inside for Godot so that you can use it and put overlays and stuff in. He's building all that out. Got awesome overlays himself. He's recently done a game jam, which was fantastic, and did all that dev on stream. So if you haven't yet, I would recommend going following Kanye. And I don't have a bot enabled to shout out you as well, Apex. Just now I have to wait because Twitch went and put all the awesome shout out stuff in there and then put time limits on how long we can wait before shout outs. You have to have a bot installed to do shout outs. Anyway. Okay. So yeah, I don't need any information, right? The planning item, knowing that it's from a ticket, is all I care about right this second. The actual information, I can still defer that piece until later, right? As far as my goal goes, right, I just need the API to invoke, and I need to put those pieces in. So I don't need to solve that problem. Nowhere right now. So what changes are required on planning? Adding a source identifier. API for internal API for promotion. That sounds very odd until I look at your emojis, by the way. Okay, so let's acknowledge something. I'm about to create an internal API, right? The internal API is not the shared API from the front end side of the tickets component or the planning items component. But it does come with an inherent problem and a risk. One of stability. So by creating an API and building a dependency upon that API from my ticket system to my planning items, I have now created a coupling that is not necessarily correct. That is not good in the long term, but it does get me forward with the ideas, right? I'm not going to develop any complicated queuing mechanism, right? Because right now I'm in control of the system, right? But I cannot leave this alone, right? If I leave an API in there, I have to put in some resiliency, because otherwise I remove the ability to independently deploy these two components. So if I just forgot that I have, I forgot that two puppies that might want to play. So I would have them in my room with me all the time, but my room has too many computers and video games, so I can't have them chewing things while I'm stood here talking. Right. So having an internal API couples my systems, right? I can then not independently deploy these, because if this is down and this goes to promote, this fails. I don't want to put any resiliency in this in terms of its calls right now, right? I want to assume that they both are up and running. So I'm going to go happy path in the development of this piece. Because what it does do is allows me to consider the next steps. And it does give me that link, and it does set up the structure so that later on, and this is something that you mentioned, Dota, right? Later on, I can replace this component, right? But I'm not going to jump through the hoops of making some sort of queuing or outbox pattern on this side to publish these to the planning items. I'm just going to make an API call, and if it fails right now, right? Because I still have this question of what do I do with this data, and I also need to consider how I draw diagrams, right? Because what I was going to do initially was publish the information. So once I said, "Hey, promote this item," go and publish the ticket, the notes and stuff for this ticket. But I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do. I think I don't need to do that. Wait a second. I love the actors' emotes. Yeah, they are really nice emotes. And Kenny, thank you for the look. And Mr. Jones, good afternoon. Hope you're well. Okay. Let's get some actual software written. And again, if you're new to the stream, if you want to ask questions, it doesn't matter if they're simple questions. It doesn't matter if you're new to coding. You're more than welcome to ask. I do not mind diverting and describing things. I certainly don't mind discussion about software development. So if you disagree with my patterns and my practices, feel free. So I think I'm going to end up with the domain service here. That domain service is going to publish. That's an interesting find. That domain service is going to publish the, or rather, invoke the call to the API. I think the simplest thing is actually start from the API side, because then I can balance that part out. my brain's thinking, I'm thinking too far ahead of myself here. I'm trying to think about challenges and issues that I'm going to hit. And I can see some dependency issues that are coming if I put that in the main service. But anyway. Here is a design issue. Clean architecture. Background. Images. I'm going to bring this up. Okay. So this is the pattern I'm following, right? Or rather, the framework I'm following or developing here. I have been very explicit about the actual components so that it's very clear what I'm talking about. I'm okay with that, right? I don't mind. But what it has highlighted through learning and looking at other options, they do differ in how they consider some of these pieces. However, right now, this is my API, my presentation layer. My application sits in the middle and has reference to the domain, right? So tickets application references the domain. The main itself references my shared kernel, and that's it, right? So it's kind of right. It's at the center of everything. It does everything. This internal API will probably deem infrastructure, right? So it's still on this outside ring, right? Interestingly, persistence is out there as well. So, right, but that's the infrastructure. Anyway, infrastructure persistence, one and the same. So the actual context is there. I'm still getting used to how to refer to the diagram and reference it. So what I was thinking there is, so first thing, my planning items internal, right? I'm going to create a solution folder called internal, just to keep it visibly separate. Again, this would actually not live here in the long term. This is an API. Planning item internal. I'm going to be really explicit about it. Because in the source folder, it is a web API. On 8. There's no auth. Don't need Docker support right now. I can add that later. Docker support is not a challenge. Right. Don't need that. Don't need that. That. Add. Directory. No. Manage NuGet packages. Fast endpoints. So there is a pattern of using fast endpoints to basically just send the command. I'm not going to do that right a second. So what I've got to keep doing here is, especially as I'm still kind of getting used to some of the challenges this design gives me. What I'm trying to get used to is, okay, well, I have my API, so now I'm on this blue layer here, right? I can still call my application, right? which can still invoke my domain. That's fine. So from the planning items perspective, right? Is it okay to have multiple application pieces? Because it's still the application layer, right? Because what I don't want to do is necessarily have the same add, because it is different, right? When you're adding a planning item through the software, it is a different behavior than when you're adding an item because of an external influence. However, obviously now if I create a separate application layer, well, it's not a separate application layer, it's a separate part of the application layer. This guy on LinkedIn is not going to like my response to his YouTube video. Oh no. You joining Nick Chapsas in bringing down LinkedIn posters. So if you haven't seen it, Nick Chapsas does a series of videos. Can't remember what he called it. He called it, initially it was like LAPD or something like that, right? Where he was basically just criticizing people posting, Code Cop, that's the one. He was criticizing people posting information that isn't wholly correct. He 100% does not understand hexagonal. Hey, Fool Boss, good morning. Doctor, I'd be interested if you want to post the link to the video in the Discord. Not for now. I'm not going to review it on stream, but I would like to have a look. Because then I can ask. Oh, okay. You started it, okay. Yeah, okay, that was the one that you posted this morning. And that's why it was in random chat. Okay. I'm wondering why this is a class for add planning item versus where the class is for the planning item resource. Well, this is a class for add planning item. So you want to treat them like two applications that work independently of each other, but that part of a layer of app. This is the class is on with add. Okay, so the way this is layered, so the way this is built, I have an endpoint called planning items, right? It posts. What I do is when I have classes that are all linked, no matter what, I nest the classes underneath, right? So this add planning item represents a use case, essentially. Right, I'm going to add a planning item. The verbiage that the user would use would be add a planning item. It would not say post a planning item or create a planning item. They might do, but we can go into that. Creating things in systems is always a difficult one to choose the right verbiage. But add planning item, right? I want to add a new planning item. Right? The new is redundant, so again. So what this does is this add planning item has a command and a handler. So when I invoke the command, the handler is what receives that command. And then this does the thing. Junior goes, yeah, it sounds like you want to treat the two applications that work independently of each other. So what I'm mindful of is, obviously, I've now created this internal API, but I don't necessarily want the internal API invoking my regular API or invoking application components that are in my regular API, or do I? Right? I'm just challenging my own expectations here enough to ask to pause and think about my design. Right? So the planning items themselves, right? So the key difference here is, in this instance, when I do an internal, I'm only calling this internally to promote it, right? And it has a source, right? So there might be an endpoint here. We are not using mediator. We're using mediator. because why could we not actually create some libraries with actual names? So Mediator R is Jimmy Bogard. I was using that. It is awesome. I've never had any real major issues with it. I was looking at some stuff because I saw a bunch of people criticizing that library. It's not Ardalis. And I picked up this Mediator library, which is pretty new overall. I mean, it uses code gen rather than any reflection. So it's a little bit quicker, a little bit less memory intensive. Has all the same features as Mediator. So I'm using this one, and I can't remember the person who's... Have a look. And actually, it works from a dependency standpoint because your main application doesn't need to take a dependency on that library. Only the library that's using it does. It is this one. Martin Altemar? Yeah, it's good. So that's Mediator. But one of the things he's got in there is I'm thinking of renaming this because it's kind of generic. Because he's named the library after the pattern. Okay, have you considered gRPC? No, because I don't want to add yet another layer of complexity to this, and this is not this is not the long-term solution for this problem, right? This is a interim solution to identify the next pieces of data I need, etc. So again, anytime you do this in your application, if I've got these two components in my system and I build an internal API, I have built a hard dependency, a coupling of those two systems, right? I can now no longer independently deploy them because I need planning items to always be up if tickets is going to do something, right? Yes. So we kind of talked about this the other week. So this originally said service bus, right? And Gota came in and was like, no, overkill. And he's not wrong, right? It was a good stopping point and a good check to think, okay, well, do I want to do this, right? I should also make sure this is all kind of a thought right now. Right? So I'm kind of using this as a pointing diagram right now rather than actually a useful, meaningful data flow diagram. Apex, I'm sorry. I don't know if I answered your question before. If you have any actual questions, if you ever want to go through this, from an education standpoint, I'm more than happy to discuss it. Discord and stuff. So yeah, right now this is a stopgap measure to create this, but in reality, I wouldn't do this because now I can't deploy these two things, right? This should be a thing that fires. Mass transit is the one that I've been looking at, but I realized that I had to spend a significant amount of time and configuration and learning some of those challenges to get forward. And now I need to, again, right now what I want to do is get these pieces kind of figured out, because that will give me my long-term data story. I don't need to figure this out to this, because once I've done this to this and figured out where my data lies and how I'm going to promote data, etc., I can start to build a UI and continue moving the application forward and build the right stories. And then I can actually focus on that as a dedicated piece. One thing I found hard is to debug using these libraries. Adding fluent validation and pipeline behavior makes it so hard to debug issues for me. So I do have some thoughts on that one, Sarav. I actually started tinkering with it over the weekend, and I'm not going to do it on stream because it was it was a challenge. But I actually did start over the weekend doing some telemetry stuff. One thing I found hard is hard to debug using these libraries. Adding fluent validation and pipeline behavior makes so hard to debug for the issues for me. Sorry, Apex. I forget that YouTube is not visible on Twitch as much as Twitch is visible on YouTube. And I do read fast. That's nervousness, by the way. I am extremely nervous every time I stream. So yeah, from a debugging perspective, I started looking at some of these tools to try and implement some sort of tracing, because one of the benefits of using this pattern is I can use the pipeline behaviors to put tracing and telemetry in here. So I can actually make sure that I don't want to infect my handlers with logging. So yeah, that is a goal, to get those pieces in there. And I do have some prototype code that I'm working on off stream. Yeah, I don't know the right way. So, hold on, let me jump back up and make sure I'm answering the technical pieces. Are we using mass transit for transaction management? No, not yet. Mass transit will be coming. I will be looking at using mass transit as this component here, and this component, and other inter-service communication. When it's data, I'm going to use Kafka. I'm not going to piggyback onto Kafka message bus, right? I'll use RabbitMQ and mass transit for inter-process messaging, and for data promotion and data proliferation. That'd be the same word. Then I'll use Kafka. Do you want to have an API for now that calls some API, but eventually the implementation? Yes. And this should answer my questions, right? It should give me enough information to answer what do I actually need, and how do I proceed for this design. So I'm always looking to learn. Yeah. Any questions if you want to ask things? I have considered doing kind of office hours in the Discord, if anyone's interested in that, like sitting down and going through this in a more personal, and I'm thinking I'd offer that to subscribers as kind of a benefit, right? Being able to go into a Discord chat and sit down and go through it in more detail, because my Discord server is boosted, so I can stream at a higher quality there as well. Choreography or orchestration communication between services. So that is kind of one of the things Essa brought up the other week, right? It's kind of a mix. And again, that's kind of why I'm doing this the way I'm doing it right now, because the components, I want to understand the data flows. I want to understand why I'm doing certain things and where I'm going to pull data from. And once I understand those things, I can come up with a better idea of, do I need to choreograph or do I need to orchestrate? Or maybe both. Yeah, you look weird answering a question and responding to a comment that's not here. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of difficult. So what I was going to say, Fritz does actually use Restream, and he has Restream bot post the YouTube comments into Twitch, which I'm not too sure. Twitch, what's it called? It's not multi-stream. I'm going to say multi-stream guidelines. So Twitch has some rules. Simulcasting, there we go. So Twitch has some rules that I'm meant to follow when I'm doing multi-streams, right? You ensure that the quality of Twitch users' experience of your simulcast is at a minimum no less than the experience on other platforms. Or being that on YouTube you get higher resolution, Twitch is making sure you don't get the same experience. You get true 1440p on YouTube. You don't get on that on Twitch. You should not provide links or otherwise direct your community to leave Twitch for your simulcast on other services. Oops, sorry. You do not use third-party services to combine activity from platforms or services on your Twitch stream during your simulcast, such as merging chat or other features to ensure the Twitch community is included. So I suppose if you're restreaming the chat into Twitch, kind of okay. Dota, thank you. Have a great day at work. Thank you as always for your contributions. I'm going to check that video out afterwards and See what I think. Is this hexagonal architecture or vertical slice because you have a handle on the same file? It's neither. Right now, I'm just following clean architecture. Someone recently, like within the last couple of months, that I've even said I subscribe to any sort of architecture. I'm not a big fan of trying to say, hey, I'm following this architecture, let's stick to it perfectly, right? And I have a handle on the same file because this is a logical component, right? There's no benefit in having a separate file for a command, being that this command will only ever go to this handler. So that's a logical grouping of this information. I love the diagram stuff you've added. Good. I am going to try and get better at diagrams, I promise. That could be good, not only for this, but the water drink water one too, because that when you can get contribution. And so that's why water drink water is a thing, right? Water drink water is a thing so that some of these things that we do on this project, or some of the things I do on this project, I can still share those with everybody. We can actually maybe, hey, how do we do this in this application? And I can go and implement the same things in the water drink water application for everyone to see on stream, but they can then also tinker with it themselves and play with it. It's why I kind of have said, do not go and do any sort of major architectural refactoring of water drink water. Though I'm not trying to say, hey, only I know how to do that. I'm just trying to say, hey, that sort of stuff would benefit from that. Having used mass transit in GEMS, it is very clean and comfy abstraction of messaging. A weird issue we had was that mass transit required that all message model classes must have exact matching name and namespace to work, even if you connect to a queued name explicitly. One of the challenges I've had with message buses in general is the whole who knows what when. When you start up, things have to be started up in the right order so that they can register correctly. I don't know if mass transit is that way. Because it kind of is a mix at this point of some of its technology is a little bit different. But I initially used End Service Bus now over 10 years ago. And it was great. But if you didn't start your services up in the right order, they didn't register the commands and things like that. And you ended up having to restart applications just because they needed things. So that's why I wasn't too against pulling mass transit out at this point and using this internal API, because it does give me all the right answers and all the right, questions at the same time as giving me some time to back off and go and spend a bit more time in mass transit. We can learn mass transit there. On the water drink water app, that might be a little harder to implement. It might be a bit more of a stretch, but it's something we can definitely discuss. All right. And as with everything, if I'm developing stuff on stream that is useful to everybody, I will happily create libraries or small projects just to help share that information. Just because it's in my main application now doesn't mean that everything's, I'm sharing the code visibly, but, there are components, and you can get to them, not on. I have to create a command from my GitHub. My GitHub is linked in the panels below there. Right. But I do share those libraries as actual things on GitHub. I think it has the state machine to manage the states. So sagas are a big component of a message bus. They are a very useful component when you are orchestrating. Correct? Orchestrating? Yes, orchestrating. That is orchestration. But I don't want to come up with contrived examples for this project. Water drink water, I'm a little bit more willing to do some, stretching a little bit on the ideas. Okay. So anyway, anyone new joining the stream, anyone that's not been around here before, this is common. It's okay to discuss software. It's okay to ask questions, to challenge, to push back. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff because sometimes talking about it allows you to think about what you actually understand, what you actually know, and what you actually think you're going to do versus what you're going to do. So this all started because what I was talking about is I have planning items internal now, right? I've created this API. The goal will be for this domain, which we're going to get into in a minute. I'm going to create a domain service here that is to promote a ticket, and that is a domain service, I believe. It's not orchestrated, it's an actual action that the domain of tickets should do, right? There's no event that triggers it, there's just an action in the UI that would ultimately trigger the service to say, hey, promote this ticket, right? The application will orchestrate that, blah, blah, blah. Right now, this will invoke this API. This API will then need to turn around and create a planning item with a source. Right now, it doesn't have source. Right? We have a planning items add planning item, right? But this one is from the main application. Now, other than source, is there any difference? I don't know that. Because this will not be an authenticated API, this will be an internal API. I could make it a part of the API that you have to pass that, so that's not necessarily a reach. Review date. So this comes title. So a planning item gains a title, right? So I'll show you the example of that. That's not it. That's not good place to do that. Create a scratch file. Down. There's a good question. Could it be that the ticket app authenticates to the planning app as an application client as some privileges to act on behalf of the user? Well, so the challenge is that way it's the same web API, but the challenge there is then I'm adding a layer of complexity that I intend to remove. Right, this internal API is not going to be here. So, and the reason I'm doing this is to try and answer these questions, right? What do I actually need? Because I don't know what I need. I'm not thinking about that enough at a macro level. And maybe going through the entire application and planning it out a little bit more, in a little bit more detail will give me some of this stuff, but I have no idea how to model that properly without just random thoughts everywhere. So if I make the ticket app authenticate, then I have to put in some infrastructure. I have to put in all sorts of other things to make that happen for something that I intend to fully remove and never use again. I don't see this as a good design in the long term for any component of my system, right? From an explicit perspective, I would rather have separate APIs to make sure that it's very clear that the behavior is different. So from a ticket perspective, a ticket doesn't have a title. A ticket doesn't need a title, right? So a ticket has a customer name and it has a description, right? So as a review date, everything gets a review date. right? That is the one thing that I want to make sure that is consistent throughout the application, right? A review date. Yeah, it is glue still. That part gives me false is the unauthenticated API for internal use, the unauthenticated part. If you're going to replace it, then that sounds okay. Yeah, it's unauthenticated. This will never make it to production because this piece will be long since replaced. So this is only a development concern. So I don't think it's harmful to necessarily do it this way. Hey, Arian, how are you doing? Good day. Hope you are well. You too. Have a good one. Okay, so the ticket has a customer name, a description, and a review date. Planning item has a title, a description, a review date. They both have created by user identifier. They both do have assigned. But assigned doesn't mean anything because assigned, once it becomes a planning item, is a totally different problem, right? So there is no assign to, unless you assign it to the same person who created it temporarily, which I don't think is necessary. So in the API transfer, the only things that are common are these things, right? Those are the things I need. The title, yeah, they're assigned to a tenant, yeah. Good idea. I would have forgotten again. This is the challenge of developing in a vacuum. So I do need to know the tenant ID that it's coming from, right? So I think it's okay for the title to be created on the fly here. But customer name still. Well, again, I'm worried about transferring of data here. I don't need to. Obviously, this has right. This is a ticket identifier, right? Make sure again I'm being explicit. I would have forgotten the tenant. Easily forgotten the tenant up until later. I did the same thing with tickets earlier on, right? But I forgot this piece on tickets. I had to go back and put some of it in. Where was that scratch? So already this is kind of giving me pause for, okay, well, there is a slight difference here. So the title will have to be generated, I think. I don't think there's any benefit in having the ticket system set the title ahead of time. It should just be, I think from a usability perspective, this is better if the user just gets to say promote and it gets promoted. Remember that. On the other side, in the planning side, will they receive the promoted item or will it just show up in the list of things? Well, they know they're promoting it. It would have to be put into a new status. So yeah, this is starting to get to the point where it definitely is a different handler, right? It 100% is. This handler is definitely in an application layer that is internal, but is not going to go away. These pieces are going to live forever, right? Right. Well, again, the point of this is, hey, you hit promote, it becomes a planning item. You can now go into your planning and see the item, and probably it would be highlighted as a recently created thing. So you can go and finish things, yeah. So if I generate a title that is promoted from ticket, right, that does give us some other things to talk about, actually. There's some other challenges here. How am I going to track some of these things? I've got like 8 different tools open now. This does give me some of the... I need to kind of figure out a good to-do list that I can cognitively cope with. Was that going to do what I thought it was going to do then? It looked like it was going to do something. Nice. I need that. I need to design how I'm going to do. Yeah, you're right. In terms of receive the promotion, they can finish some of the things. Yeah. Okay. So what this would do, this would come with, let's say, eventually this comes with a readable identifier, right? Readable is, or user-friendly, or whatever we kind of call this, right? This is you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, when you refer to the ticket. T9, T29, right? So this is Liquid Sky T29, so Liquid Sky ticket 29. All right. That's a readable identifier. That's not a GUID, that's not an ID, that stays with this thing, right? That is its identifier that is visible and shareable. So if I refer to it, that's the user-friendly one, right? The internal identifier is something that is used to cross systems and still refer to the same thing, but not have to rely upon a string, even though it's a GUID. And the ID is always an internal concept, right? The challenge of this is this creates another grouping problem, right? That's beyond tenant, right? Mainly this one, teams, which I haven't really thought through yet. This is turning into more of a planning stream than I thought it would be. So I apologize if you are joining the stream and you're thinking, hey, get on with some code. The code will come, but the code needs to benefit from some significant thought. So I don't want to rush in and just do this. I want to ask the right questions and stop at the right point. So like a correlation token is something to track across all the services in the larger app. Oh, well, this is kind of... Okay, how do I draw this? This is... Oh, well, save as. Rambling. Why do you want to save in my Google Drive? Nice. Rambling stuff. Okay. So, we have, from an organizational perspective, we have a tenant. Hey, Radio Patrick. Thank you for stopping by. Welcome. Hope you're well. So, for me, from an architectural perspective, sounds pretentious. A tenant has teams, right? Organizational. That's what I want to say. I don't want this. This is not going to demonstrate my purpose, right? So we have tickets, planning items, and stories, right? But they aren't just top level, right? There is associated groups that are going to touch these things, right? So these tickets, when they're created, are associated with a thing. Whether, I'm not calling them boards right now, because again, each system can have something slightly different. But, the ticket system will have a Kanban style board, right? Well, this board belongs to a group, right? It's not just a single board for everything in the system. So I need to kind of create, game stack, water drink water is in here as well, right? So water drink water is its own set of boards, right? It comes with its own identifiers, right? WDWT2, right? So as I go through this process, I need to assign not only a tenant, right? Because obviously the tenant has send feedback. There you go. So the tenant sits at this level, right? Then there's still teams within here, and forgive my very rudimentary diagramming here, but I think it gets the point across, right? A lot. Yeah. Right. Still teams in here that will have tickets, and the thing is, when they promote to another thing, that planning item will have its own reference, but it will have a source reference as well. Right. So you'll say, oh, that's ticket 3, right? Well, planning item 65 is ticket 3, right? Or ticket 952, right? So there's still that need to produce these. So I don't need it for this piece, but it is something that now I need to kind of think about. How am I going to do that? I need this readable identifier eventually, right? So that's kind of long term, right? That suggests something different. So from a design perspective, if I have that information, I can say, okay, well, the title is promoted from ticket SRC 1234, right? Rather than a GUID, which makes no sense whatsoever, right? So right now I can just put promoted from ticket, right? Because I'm trying to focus on the workflow over the entire system. But I quickly need to come around and identify groupings as an extra piece as well, which will probably be next once I've figured this part out. So the more I talk about it, the more I'm on the opinion that I do create an internal application, right? Which is going to be a really funky project name, right? Planning items, internal application, right? It's okay for it to reference the domain. It's okay for it to have infrastructure. It's just its own set of pieces that are, right? So if we go back to our little diagram, right, it is still in this green ring, no matter what I do. The application is the application. It doesn't matter if nothing in the rules says that I have to distribute this in one project, right? I can have 6 projects that are the application, as long as they are the application. Again, looking back at other examples from, people who have put the term ultimate clean architecture sample, theirs differs to someone else who has the ultimate clean architecture sample. So there's no right way of doing this. So what I will do is, so the only redundant thing here right now is my naming. I think this becomes planning, right? Actually, I probably should do that now rather than later. Planning items is a concept within the planning section, right? The tickets, overloaded terms, right? Often becomes a challenge. The naming is hard. Well, let's do that now rather than wait till later. No. Hold on. Add internal components. Planning. Really? So, as always, if you're new to the stream, I don't know why that's taking so long. If you're new to the stream, feel free to ask questions, feel free to criticize or complain or question. I'm happy to go through the code. I'm happy to look at this project specifically is my personal project. This is not open source. I do other projects on stream. Monday and Tuesdays, I do Water Drink Water, which is a viewer shared project. It can be found there. But this project is one of it's a personal quest, that's for certain. And it's one that I'm trying to solve a problem for that I believe exists. As such, I am not going to make it open source. Okay, this is fun, but I have to go to work. We'll talk to you later. The office hours things sound fun, particularly to discuss Water Drink Water. Yeah. I'll put some more thought into it, and I'll post in the Discord and see if anyone's interested. We'll give that a go, maybe. Have a great day at work. Thank you. See you again soon. Okay, let's do the renaming. So this is the planning section. This is not the planning items section. That is very specific, calling it planning item, right? I now need to do a bit of a refactor, right? Let's see if planning internal. Rename root namespace. So if I do this right, the tooling should deal with most of this. Planning internal application. This becomes planning. No, we don't need to refactor that. Can I not do that, please? Yeah, exclude that one. Include that one. Planning application. Planning main. Planning infrastructure. So it was tempting to name that planning items because I named the other one tickets. But essentially the other one is ticketing, right? And tickets exist in ticketing because I'm kind of representing the behavior of the system, not the actual component itself. So naming of that is probably going to change as well. But let's see what happens now. Refactor this. They're just namespaces. Okay, so you just work. What were you telling me? That will have changed every single file in this component. Add planning item, namespace. Yeah, planning items, application, planning items. My namespacing is odd right now. Doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt anything. as long as it's organized logically, then it's fine. Rename planning item to planning, because I'm representing again the overall concept. So tomorrow's stream will be a little longer, I think, because I have a day off tomorrow. So I'm probably stream a little bit longer tomorrow. Also, I'm getting caught in that rat's nest right now. Friday, I may not be able to stream for very long. So my stream either will be broken up into two, or my planned coding challenge, which is in the Discord, if you haven't checked it out yet. The planned coding challenge will probably move to Saturday. We'll have to see. I haven't firmed up that plan yet. So if you've not seen before, what I do every now and then is I do a coding challenge on stream. So in the Discord, there is a coding challenges topic, and in there I pick 3 subjects from a coding challenge website. And what I do is on stream, I pick up, I pick the one that's voted the highest. I then, at the start of the stream, I open up the challenge site and read the requirements for the first time and go through developing that from scratch. And it's kind of just a little bit of fun to help test my analytical skills and my coding, coding on the fly. We go through the refactoring and stuff, and it seems to be something people do enjoy seeing. But success or fail, I don't mind. It's not a watch me code, learn all the best things. It's watch me fail, and struggle, prove that just because I've done this a long time doesn't mean I know any more than you do. So, okay. That being said, I think this API is definitely internal. It doesn't fit. There's rules and behaviors in this version of this that are not the same, right? If anything, this is kind of like add planning item from ticket, or add promoted planning item, right? There's an explicit behavior here that needs to be expressed differently than just add a planning item. I never got the rationale behind disabling OpenAPI for provision. It's funny you say that, because yesterday I was doing the fast endpoint stuff. I don't know if you were here, CC. Is it tenant management? No, it was water, drink water. Hold on. I'm going to, I'm almost done. There's no point trying to write some tests there now. I didn't meditate on it, I just think it's odd. No, it just made me think of something. So this is the water, drink water app that we were talking about, that we were doing yesterday, right? And one of the thoughts I had was, you can see the difference here, right? Once I use fast endpoints has these extension methods. I suppose I could still. Hold on. Fast endpoint shows it like this, right? Just all the time, right? Now looking back at the API, I'm questioning, I don't need so the fast endpoints documentation shows it as being always on. Is kind of my point there, right? I can see hiding it or securing it. But I know that I've worked with APIs that have it turned on in production. Yeah. Fast endpoints is a pretty fascinating library so far. I'm still, and again, on board with the whole concept of my endpoints basically just shooting straight through to my application through the events, but I'm not using that part yet. But I'm making heavy use of fast endpoints in this application. Okay. How are you doing, by the way? I'm a decades-long C# developer, but I'm diving into Rust a little now. Still love all the modern tech. Everything is so good now. Nice, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to learn. There's definitely a lot to learn. No. It's I think it's harder than ever to learn what is relevant, because what is relevant keeps moving. Keep using the technologies, keep playing with the technologies. There's a point at which there's too much to learn. I have looked at Rust a little bit, but I don't have any practical applications for anything else right now. So I'm like, I'm going to stick with my C# and just keep trying to add new things in there and look at new libraries and make sure I keep learning and growing there. I too have been doing this for a long time, but let's keep having fun with it. So, tests. A slightly different take on it, I guess. Learning Rust is not super hard, but if you want to collaborate, it's a little hard to find people. So most of my hurdles are not tech, but finding people. I guess I've just got used to being on my own as a developer. Maybe it's why I stream, right? Because I do like collaboration, right? It's my favorite thing to do. But I don't find many people love doing this stuff. So going on Twitch and streaming this stuff is, a way of finding people that do love this stuff, because you're not in the stream because it's just fun to sit there and have on in the background. That's for certain. So I think you're actively seeking this sort of stuff if you're finding my stream and sticking around for any amount of time. So maybe that's why I stream, the collaboration aspect. But from Rust, learning new languages. If there was something compelling in Rust that it did differently than C# and it did better than C#, that's when I'd probably pick up Rust, right? Because I think that's when you learn more about what you're doing, and it might give you a different perspective on the C# way of doing things or whatever. Or is there a thing that Rust offers that makes it faster? Then I'd probably look at Rust, right? Because I don't have an issue with using the right technology for the right job, right? I have no issue with saying, hey, this component can be in a completely different language because it does it way better than .NET and C#. That's the way I kind of look at that. Well, I totally relate. I'm setting up a service and I'm the only one committing to the repo so far, but I have 5 people talking about how they want to contribute. They just don't. Yeah. People, lives, challenges, fear, right? a water drink water thing that's deliberately set up so that people can contribute. Junicus as Junicus has done for 5 years now or more, driving contribution there from my perspective and allowing me to keep that relevant. But it requires, if I'm going to continue doing that sort of stuff, then it requires people to actually contribute and interact, because it's kind of the purpose. I think it is objectively better, but C# is awesome. I think you can't really go wrong with C#. It stole so much from S#, and Don Simon's a genius. Yeah, I mean, C# has definitely evolved. Object orientation is not something that you have to focus a lot of time on anymore. There is a lot of functional behavior. I mean, getting rid of classes as your entry point. I mean, I know underneath it does it, but just from a writing perspective, from a design perspective, C# is very different now than it was 10 years ago. Okay. So, what are my next steps? Well, I think I need to get some tests in here, get some application code written around this piece, right? This endpoint. Kind of define, okay, here's what I need, here's where the pieces are that I'm missing. And that is the goal of this piece anyway, right? I was not trying to necessarily solve the long-term problem here. I was trying to solve what don't I know about this component, because once I figured out this piece, the tickets, the planning items, story, the data flow, I will have a much better idea of what the greater system looks like, because I will have to understand how data gets promoted and what it means to have that data promoted into planning it. I can then turn around and focus on what does the flow in planning items look like. From my perspective, planning items has a similar path, right? Kind of a Kanban board, right? And again, the idea is visibility, right? So an item that is in planning is one that can be in front of developers. Developers can review it, etc. You can story point potentially, or essentially. It's not spikes. It's definitely not spikes. This is all from a planning perspective. So I can start. Okay, how do I do that? What do I need? What do I need when a ticket has been promoted now? And again, I think I have to tackle that teams challenge, right? How do I group the actual tickets and planning item stories? So I think I have to introduce the concept of teams, which gets me down into a rabbit hole of users and all those sorts of fun things. So yeah, I think I have some things to go off here. I will see this part through, because I think it does definitely show the flow and does allow me to highlight those extra pieces. But eventually this will get replaced, right? This internal will not be a thing. This will be a set of services. I'm a little new to your stream. Have you used Kafka in a production setting before? I have, yes. Yeah. Kafka is still something that I want to sit down, and I would love to sit down with someone who knows a little bit more about Kafka, and get a better idea of how to use it effectively. I think my use of it is definitely open for debate. I believe in Kafka. Kafka is at its best, I feel, when it is producing data, and eventing as such. So when I say Kafka here, right, a lot of discussion around Kafka is about events, right? But the way my system is going to build is when I have a need to publish information, I'm going to publish the information, right? So I'm going to publish a ticket. I'm going to publish a tenant. I'm not going to publish the tenant was created. I'm not going to publish the tenant was updated. I'm going to publish the tenant. Here you go. I'm going to attach kind of why it got triggered, just in case anyone cares, but people can consume it. That's how I've used Kafka so far. And it's why I don't want to use it for messaging. I don't want to kind of double dip on my use of Kafka. Again, using the right tools for the right jobs. So I have used Kafka in production. My use here is a little bit evolved of what I've done in the past, but the same concepts. Right? Because once you start publishing information out of your system, right, you can build the system. Right? You can build analytics platforms. You can build, query-focused data structures. You can build search. You can do all sorts of stuff. Your main application doesn't have to know about it. So yeah. So you will see more of that. Kafka will definitely become a very prominent component of this application as we move forward. There's a lot of stuff. I haven't used Orleans. I have used Akka, which is a similar technology, I believe. Unless I'm wrong about Orleans. The actor pattern stuff. That is a technology that I would Apex, thank you very much. Thank you for hanging out. Have a great day at work, and I'll see you again soon. I'd love to get more into, because I've used Akka to do some sort of processing of data in terms of like a multi-stage processing of data that I could, hey, I've got all this flowing information. So let's say 3,000 tickets get produced, right? I've used Akka to say, okay, well, this needs some prioritization or whatever, and it needs to go through multiple stages. That's where I applied Akka. So whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but definitely a technology I would love to play with more. And Orleans, I did try Orleans, but I found the Akka API is a little bit easy to understand at the time. I haven't used Kafka. Upon research, I found RabbitMQ is faster, lower latency when it comes to smaller message-based stuff. Kafka is better for large data streaming. Maybe. Kafka has message limits. Message size limits. It's not like you can transmit an entire object through Kafka. There is actually a cap on how much data it can transfer. Kafka is good from a resiliency perspective. Kafka is good from hey, I don't know whether I need this information. Again, don't forget, Kafka was built to solve the problem of distributed logging inside of LinkedIn. Right? All these systems needed to know about this information. It produces that information, and then they can consume it. But you can also now build a new system on top of it and consume events. And because you can do archival, you can start your new system up and have 2 weeks worth of data to produce already. But there's some other challenges with it, which we'll go into. I wouldn't really use Kafka for something that relies on low latency and user interaction. So again, the way I'm using Kafka, or the way I'm going to use Kafka. So let's say I have, I really need to finish up, I'm afraid, but let's say I have search, right? A lot of times people will put search in the same database as the ticket. So if I wanted to search for a ticket, you're going to end up with some text-based indexes inside of the database for tickets, right? I don't want to do that, right? when a ticket is produced, etc., I want to publish it, and I want to consume it in my search system. That is Elasticsearch, right? It's built for that. API, and that search component can still live within this tickets component, as I call it. Yeah, I'll cover that in a second. But then I can publish that information, and now I can build my search system, and I can actually build another API for the search, and then hook that into my UI, right? I've kind of got this big red box. It's kind of my thought pattern. What I'm tempted to do right now is produce all the data from my individual systems and combine it into a read-only view database that is more optimized for the client, right? So the client doesn't have to make API calls to tickets. It doesn't have to make API calls to planning items and stores. It doesn't have to know where it's going. It can be built upon one big view that is optimized for a query, and I can put GraphQL and whatnot on top of that. I haven't done that before, so that's a thought experiment. Whether it's the right way, I don't know. And as for, you can use Kafka. So mass transit can use Kafka for backing. Same way it uses RabbitMQ, right? So I could use one technology and have mass transit sat on top of it, and still use Kafka underneath for my own topics. I'm not going to do that. If I'm going to do it, RabbitMQ is going to be used for mass transit, so that I have a distinct separation of technology. Later on, when I understand more, I can reflect back on that. Again, all these components are built so that, making a drastic change to the architecture, to the technology, does not make a drastic change to the architecture. That being said, it is time for me to finish up. And that's my problem. So Kafka has kind of, in the last couple of years, Kafka's very much lent into the whole messaging component. And we'll go into that when we start doing more Kafka message stuff, or Kafka eventing stuff. I don't like that. I like the way Kafka works for what I'm doing with it. I don't like jimmying in messaging there, right? But yeah, we'll go into that. So yeah, if you are, if you're hanging out, you're interested, there is a Discord. It is linked below, but here you go. Conversations can always continue on into the Discord. If you have links that are useful, if you think you can share something with everybody else, please feel free. If you want to talk about development or ask for opinions on a project, the Discord is always there. So feel free to drop in and say hello. Let's see. You know what we need? We need a deflux with a raid suggestion. So I will be back tomorrow. I will be back for a slightly longer stream tomorrow. Certain at this point. We'll discuss the. I'll make progress on this evening without a doubt, and then see how we go from there. If you prefer the drink water stuff, because it is a little bit more interactive, please let me know. I'm always open to changing the balance a little bit to help. To help with things. Yeah, no worries, Susie. Thank you for hanging out, and thank you for the discussion. It's always good to meet other people who care about this stuff, right? So, not sure I know of any. I don't know of any other dev streamers streaming. If anyone has any suggestions, I'm more than open to it. But if not, we will raid over to Captain Coder is the best person to go and raid, I think. He is doing .NET, does educational stuff. I think right now he's building a chess game as well, so it is kind of fascinating. What else? Coding challenge. That will either be Saturday, maybe Friday still. We'll see. Depends on what time breakfast is. Yeah. I get that. It's hard to sometimes stick in one stream because, is fun to support, and it's also, you can get different things from different teams. I totally get that. I'm guilty of that myself. So, I'm going to raid in. I'm going to have to run pretty quickly, so I will say hello and then I will out. I do have to walk these dogs. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for hanging out. Thank you for contributions, everything else. I will see you tomorrow. Take care all.